So now that their initial reaction to the whole thing is now changed, they're all up in arms, right? They can't like deal with it in a way.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Control the Narrative, episode 50. We've been putting this out every week, obviously not in the off season, so been doing this for about a year and a half, and we're on episode 50, which is pretty dope. We have a special guest that I'm going to introduce in a second, but first of all, if you're new around here, subscribe to catch our weekly podcast. Like I said, 50th episode, so every week we put one of these out, and if you're a local around here, if you're part of the Team Melo community, we appreciate your attention as always. Been a very, very interesting week to start the season for the Portland Trail Blazers and Carmelo Anthony. So to talk it over, I'm going to bring on my guy Brandon from Canada. Brandon, what's going on, man?
Good. How's it going, man?
Good, dude. First off, just want to let everyone know, if you're on Instagram, you've probably seen his page. It's at ME70 Anthony 15. Dope fan page. Been following it for a few years on my own personal account and shit like that. So
Thank you.
Appreciate your work, man.
Appreciate it.
Of course. So let's get into you a little bit. So for those who don't know you or like your fan page, how did you get into basketball? How did you get into Melo? Obviously enough to create like a fan page like that, and all that. Just give us like some context.
Yeah, sure. Well, I started playing basketball probably 2013, I'd say. And before that, I hated it. I just didn't like playing basketball. I don't know what it was, but I ended up getting the 2K14 video game. And I've always been a fan of New York, just the city in general. So the first team I went to play with was the Knicks. And they had the guy with the headband, number 7. I was like, oh, I like this guy a lot. And he just became my favorite player since then.
That's dope. That's literally the same exact story that for me, like how I started liking Melo, except it was NBA Live 2005. So a little bit weird, but
yeah.
So like you just like liked his game and you started watching him on TV. Or like, tell me about the evolution between playing with him in the game and then like creating this fan page.
It was my friend's idea to create the fan page. Actually, he randomly one day, kind of when fan pages were kind of being more prevalent, I guess you could say. He's like, "Yo, you like Melo? Start a fan page." I was like, "I guess, like, sure, whatever." And that was probably 2017, I'd say, about 3.5 years ago. And the reason I started Melo page because he's my favorite player, but I just love his game. Like, he could do anything. He could take you off the dribble, post up, 3, mid-range. And I learned that in 2K too, because my friends, I'd just beat them with Melo all the time because I couldn't stop him. He'd just go for 50 points in 2K. And I said, yeah, how can you not like him? You know what I mean?
Dope, man. That's dope. Like I said, man, he has a dope fan page. He's at 4,600 followers right now. And like the thing I tell people is like these followers, they're diehard fans. It's not people who just like basketball or like the NBA. Like these are Melo fans. Like you see how they interact and just like how hard they ride for Melo. So
yeah,
it's dope to see. And before we started Control, like I said, man, I've been following you for a little bit, and you've done a great job of like posting highlights, stats, pictures, and all that shit. So
yeah. Just done my best because before that I followed like a D Rose fan page. I don't know if you know what it is, D Rose Reborn. He's a pretty big fan page. I was like, I'm gonna try and do what he does, just post game stats. When there's no game, post a throwback post of Melo scoring 50 or something, you know what I mean? Like just trying to keep the fans content because they want to see as much Melo content as possible, and you want to kind of bring them those things.
Dope.
Yeah.
Kind of curious, kind of a selfish question. How did you stumble upon Control? Was it like you were looking on the Explore page, like someone tagged you in something, or what?
For this podcast, or
just like the Instagram, or however you found out about us?
I don't remember. I kind of forget. It's been a while. I've been following you for a long time, I think.
Fair.
Since you had like less than 1,000 followers, I think because it was just a Melo page, right? So somehow I saw a post. I was like, Control the Narrative. That's pretty cool. Let me check it out. And I was like, oh, it's a Melo page. It's like a Melo, like just controlling the narrative. The whole idea is just dope. Like,
dope. Appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
No doubt. All right, let's get into it. Let's get into what's been going on. I kind of teased it a little bit. Very interesting week for the Blazers. Very interesting week for Melo. I think the first question we'll get into is Derrick Jones Jr. in that Houston game. So they've only played 3 games. The Blazers are 2-1 right now. Beat the Rockets and beat the Lakers, and then they lost to the Jazz opening night.
Yeah.
In that second game versus Houston, Derrick Jones Jr. ended the game over Carmelo Anthony. So Melo got subbed out with 5 minutes left. And the craziest part about all this, just to give anyone context who wasn't watching or who doesn't really know what I'm talking about, the Blazers and Rockets were tied, and the Blazers had the ball with 21 seconds left after a timeout. So you either win the game or you go into overtime, like you're getting the last shot.
Yeah.
And Terry Stotts left in Derrick Jones Jr. over Carmelo Anthony. So that had a lot of people freaking out. The Melo community on Twitter and even Instagram were really freaking out. I want to know from you, Brennan, what's your level of panic from 1 to 10? Obviously, Melo didn't play last game because of something we'll get into. But what's your level of panic from 1 to 10 in regards to Stotts playing Derrick Jones Jr. over Carmelo Anthony?
It's tough. Like, I'd like to say a 2 because it's one game. But in that moment, if this was like the one game that kind of like foreshadows the rest of the season, probably like a 6 to 7, because that's kind of is weird because Melo proved himself last season in the clutch. I think I just saw your post today where he shoot 71% in the bubble in the clutch, something like that. So it's just kind of weird how I know Derrick Jones Jr. is great at defense, like he was guarding Harden and all that. But at a point, it's like Harden still dropped 50 or 44 points that night too. So it's like at some point, defense only does so much. You need a guy that can get a basket. And Derrick Jones Jr. is not that guy. So it's like having him out there, like what's he good for in the clutch, really? A rebound, I guess? I don't know.
Right.
So yeah, I'd say like a 6 to 7.
6 to 7, that's pretty high.
Yeah, for the one game. But I said before, like it would kind of be like a 2 in the grand scheme of a 72-game season. Right. But if you're just looking at it in terms of like what's to come, like if this happens again, 6 to 7, I'd say.
Fair. I'm kind of on the same wavelength as you. I think it's a 3. Mm-hmm. And like you just said, if it keeps happening, then obviously, people are gonna start freaking out, and like I'm sure a lot of the comments on our posts are gonna be going crazy. Oh, I should have never went there, and like it's already starting. Yeah. But I would say 3 just because it was one game. Yeah. It was one game out of one game, but and I don't know if this is breaking news or something like this, but Melo was not feeling well before that Rockets game. Mm-hmm. And the reason he's out, and like I haven't seen anybody report this, but I've been hearing through the grapevine that Melo is sick, not with COVID, but with the flu. Right. And that they kept testing him, and he's testing negative, so he's probably going to join the team within the next few days because it doesn't seem like he has COVID. And from what I'm hearing, he's feeling better. So I feel like that kind of ties into everything because that was before the Rockets game. He wasn't feeling well. He didn't play well, shot 2 for 9. But I think it's a 3 just because it's one game. And, like, it is annoying that, like, Derrick Jones Jr., like you said, he plays good defense, like, great. But especially with 21 seconds left after a timeout and you have the ball, you don't bring in, like, you leave Derrick Jones Jr. out there over Carmelo Anthony. It's wild. He was hitting all those shots in the bubble 4 months ago. Yeah. And like, it seems like they've forgotten about it. And it's just, again, one game. Right now, my panic level is at a 3. So not like it's not like it's not a big deal. It's kind of a big deal, but I think, like you said, if it happens again, then we'll start to hear some more rumbles and people getting pissed off. But I'm gonna go with 3 for now.
Yeah, sounds good.
So that's that. All right. Speaking of that second unit and Melo, obviously he's coming off the bench now. They looked good last night. Gary Trent Jr. had, I think, 28
or something. Yeah.
10 of 14 shooting. He balled out. Cantor looked good last night. But in the first 2 games, it was way different, the complete opposite. So do you think that second unit is good enough? on both ends, offensively and defensively. Defensively, because Cantor is obviously the 5 in that second unit. Do you think they're good enough on both ends to keep the team in the game while Dame is sitting and sometimes when CJ is sitting, but usually one of them is in?
Yeah, like I thought about that earlier too when I saw like your list of things, and I was like, yeah, offensively, I think they can. It's just the defense, and I think that's always been Portland's problem in a way, is the defensive side. Like I feel like Cantor's a great offensive post player. Like just from watching him 2 years ago when the Blazers made the Western Conference Finals, he was great down there in the post too. CJ, yeah, he's great on offense. Those guys, Gary Trent, 28 points and all that. But even against the Lakers in the bubble, so yeah, like when they have to guard a LeBron, they have to guard those kind of guys. It's tough to find those second unit guys as a team defense because it's not really about one-on-one defense anymore. It's how a team could shut a player down. And I feel like the Blazers starting 5 got pretty good at that. Like we saw Melo on defense in the bubble, stepping it up completely, right? It's all about buying into team defense. And I feel like if the second unit can do that, it'd be much better and it'd take less stress off Dame having to go for 40, CJ having to put up 25, Melo having to come in, put up 20, which was the problem with last year. So I feel like I don't see much of a change for the second unit, except that they can all score very well. Like Rodney Hood could come in and score really well too. Anthony Simon's great scorer, but I feel like the defensive side is still what they need to work on.
Yeah, I agree, man. Just last night, it was so different because like the whole team clicked last night. Like Derrick Jones Jr. didn't shoot well. Covington didn't shoot great either, but like the whole team looked good. Cantor looked good. Gary Trent looked good. So we're really basing this off 3 games. We are recording this on Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. So it's not like we have a bunch of context or 30 games, 40 games to go off of. We're going off 3 games, but I think the same thing. I think offensively they're going to be fine. Melo leading that second unit offensively. I think he has to let the game come to him a little bit. I think he's forcing some shots, but I think Cantor can score offensively. Gary Trent can score offensively. Rodney Hood, Anthony Simons, like all of those dudes can score. Cantor cannot play defense. Gary can. Rodney Hood, he's still coming off that Achilles, so doesn't really look himself yet. He's a decent defender. Simons isn't that great of a defender, in my opinion. So I think that's going to be the part where it gets tricky because they're going to be able to score points with any other bench in the league, if we're being honest. Cantor, Melo, Hood. Like, there's not many benches in the NBA who can score like the Blazers bench can. But if they go bucket for bucket and they keep letting up, pick and roll, going at Cantor every single play, and they can't do anything, then all that scoring doesn't mean shit. And then I'm also worried about, let's say LeBron is in there, or let's say Donovan Mitchell is in against that bench unit, and that kind of gets them going so that when Dame and CJ and those guys come back, then they get into somewhat of they're already in a zone. So kind of worried about that, but I do think they can be good enough. Another thing is like they are apparently implementing a whole new defense, like on pick and rolls, help defense, and all that shit. So when you're doing that and you have a bunch of new players, it's tough. So I'm going to give it some time. I'm trying not to overreact right now, but I definitely do think that they can be good because offensively, there's no bench in the league really that I could think of off the top of my head that can score like them. So if they get their shit together defensively, and honestly, even if they're like decent, I feel like that's good enough. So
because the starting lineup's good enough offensively. Because I think what was it last year? They were first in offensive rating in the bubble. Like we all know Portland can score. So yeah, it's really just the defense that these guys gotta figure out. And I've noticed they've tried playing zone a few times. I think it was the Rockets game. Commentators called it out. I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna look for that. And yeah, they've been playing a bit of a zone. I actually saw Melo push Cantor over, like to tell him to get over there. So it's obvious they're still learning things, and they still got new pieces. So I think, like you said before, it's only a 3-game sample size, so it's hard to judge at this point.
Yeah, that's fair. Only 3 games, and it's hard to judge, but that's exactly what we're doing. We're judging off 3 games right now. So, FYI, a little bit of a disclaimer there.
Yeah, for everyone. But defense. Well, that's probably like a bit of foreshadowing too, in a way, where it's like these 3 games. It's like we kind of already know what they need to work on, but we've only seen it in a small sample size. So if they keep doing it over 10 games, 20 games, I'm not sure if much will change because the 3 games kind of show what the rest of the season will look like.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on. As far as the starters go, we know Melo's coming off the bench. It's been a big topic of discussion, and we've talked about it. Oh, Melo's going to be a 6th man, all this shit. But after 3 games, do you think the starting lineup is the right starting lineup, or would you tinker with it at all?
I feel like they should tinker because we've seen how it worked so far. 2-1's not bad, but I feel like you still got to put Melo in there at the starting lineup to really see, hey, is he not doing as well because he's on the bench, or is he playing better as a starter? You know what I mean? Like, I would personally think start Melo because he's been starting his whole career. That's just his natural spot out there doing the ritual.
Who would you take?
I'd probably say I mean, it's all about matchups nowadays. So either Covington or Derrick Jones Jr. I'd probably say Derrick Jones Jr. just because Covington can hit the 3 a little more. He's more of a 3-and-D guy. Jones is more just like an athletic lob kind of guy, backdoor alley-oops. Yep. Great defense, but I feel like if you put Melo at the 4, put Covington 3, Dame CJ and Nurkic, I feel like that'd be a great starting 5. Just to tinker with that.
Yeah, that's fair. Honestly, I feel like my answer is going to surprise you and probably a lot of people, but right now, I would leave it as it is because everyone kind of committed to their role. Like Melo has committed to coming off the bench. Derrick Jones and Covington are committed to starting at the 2 forward spots and shit. So they're 2-1. Like, we're not really hitting the panic button on the Blazers as a team. It's more like the situation and what the fuck's going on with Melo. And I kind of talked about that. Like, he's sick. My heart dropped when I was like, oh shit, is this going to be another Houston situation when they were like, oh, he's not traveling with the team? I was like, don't fucking tell me.
Yeah, not again.
Right? But honestly, I feel like right now, try it and like go 10 games, go 15 games. And if it's still not working, if, the second unit is really struggling defensively and the first unit is good, put Melo in it and take out Derrick Jones and leave Covington in there. If the second unit is really killing it offensively, then like maybe they could use a guy like Derrick Jones Jr. on that lineup to really bolster that defensively and then put Melo in the starting lineup. So I feel like it's too early right now to really tell, is this the right players and shit. So I don't want to say it was a stupid question, but I'm just curious to hear people's opinions.
Yeah.
I say fuck it. Try it out for 10, 15 games. If it's still not working, then you make moves. But I feel like right now, since everyone has committed to their role, it's tough to be like, all right, Melo, you told us you'd come off the bench, and now after 3 games, like, we're going to bring you back. And then if it doesn't work, and then they bring Melo back to the bench, then it's like, I don't know, the rumor is going to start and the whole narrative, oh, Melo can't start, like, he sucked and all this shit. So,
yeah. I agree with that too, because to me, it's all about just like from a coaching standpoint, just figuring out what lineup works best. Like you said, it's only been 3 games. Melo's played 2 of those games. Last year, he fit in very well with the starting lineup, but this year we still have to see if he's going to fit in with the second lineup. So it's really just feeling it out, trying it out. And to me, being a bench player, like I'm sure, like 6th man of the year last year was Montrezl Harrell, but I doubt he'd go off the bench every game. Like he probably had games where he did start. Some games he didn't start. You know what I mean? Like Melo, I feel like there'll be games where he'll still start and play with the starting unit. And in those games as well, how well he does. And then you could kind of really determine what's his best spot on the team.
Yeah. We'll see what Stotts figures out. But as far as the whole team goes, what has been your initial impression? Again, I keep fucking saying it, but 3 games in, what do you think of the team? Who has, I guess, really impressed you? Who have you looked at and has been kind of a disappointment? And just like, give us your thoughts on the Portland Trailblazers through 3 games.
Well, I mean, that Houston game, CJ looked very good. I have to say he looked really good, just like even in terms of like the shots he shoots. And I've always said this about CJ, he's kind of an underrated player. And he's a shot creator like Melo. Like typically those are the players that I gravitate to, guys that can create their shot in any way. any dribble, left, right, pull up, pump fake. I like all that type of stuff. So having him being at like his peak is really good. And Nurkic looks good. I feel like he still has to get better at finishing, but I feel like he's kind of like a bit of an anchor defensively in a way. But he defensively he still looks like he has like a step that he's lost from his injury. But in person, obviously Gary Trent, he really impressed me in the bubble too. Impressed me last night as well. So I'm glad they have him. They kept him. And also, in a way, Derrick Jones Jr. did too. Because at first I was like, oh, this guy's starting over Melo, you know what I mean? But I was like, I'm going to focus on him and see what he's doing. I was like, yeah, he fits in really well. He does all the little things right. So in a way, he's a guy that's impressed me as well. So probably Gary Trent Jr. and Derrick Jones Jr.
Fair. I kind of think the same thing. I've been impressed with really a lot of the guys. Like game 1, they looked fucking terrible. Game 2, they didn't look great, but CJ kind of saved the day. And then game 3, like Gary Trent saved the day, really. But they looked good defensively. So the one thing I'm kind of curious to see is how many, if any, minutes Harry Giles is going to get over Cantor at that backup 5 position, because I keep saying it, but that second unit, that bench unit defensively, once Nurkic goes off the court, is going to be really, really something that I'm keeping an eye on, just because I feel like Derrick Jones Jr. might be better on that second unit because he's a better defender than a lot of the guys on the team. So if you have a bunch of offensive guys coming in off the bench, put in a good defender in there with them. So we'll see what Cantor does in terms of defense and whether he's able to keep guys in front of him and handle the pick and roll at all. And if not, I definitely would like to see Harry Giles get some minutes. But honestly, with a lot of new guys and apparently a new defense being implemented, I'm pretty impressed by them. Like, they're 2-1. They played a hell of a game yesterday, so this might be a little bit of recency bias. They just beat the defending champions. If you had asked me how I felt about the Blazers after game 1, would not have said this. Even game 2, honestly, I would have been like, yo, if CJ didn't put up, what did he put up, 44 or 47?
44, something like that,
then, like, they would have lost. So after 2 games, I would have been like, not really sure how I feel, but after 3, after they just had a huge victory last night, hopefully they can build on it. I feel confident, and it's just about gelling, man. I just feel like defensively, once they figure out who's supposed to cover who, how you're going to guard a pick and roll, how you do this, how you do that, and just communicate, I feel like they're really going to start to pick shit up. And shorter season, 72 games, and like they barely had a training camp and shit. So I'm not mad at anything I'm seeing so far, besides Melo not being the 6th man of the year so far.
Yeah, that'd be great if he was to stay on the bench. I really think he has a chance to do that. We saw him last year in like a lesser role. I mean, we've seen him since OKC play a lesser role, and he's put up 16, 15, and 15 pretty much. So that's pretty much 6 man a year type of numbers.
Yep.
And if he really does stay and it's a winning team, which I really think Portland can be, because last year they weren't healthy at all. They didn't really have much of a structure in terms of the players, the system, and everything, because everybody was swapping in and out. Is kind of a little crazy. But now, this year coming back, I feel like they really have a team where they can kind of grow as a unit. And like the whole defense thing, like that's good. They're doing that at the start of the season, because that shows they're already committed to the other side of the ball as well. We know they could score. We know that game could go for 60 at times, CJ 40, Melo 30, right? So it's like the defense and just gelling together as a unit. I really think the Blazers could go pretty far this year.
Yeah. Let's hope you're right, man.
Yeah.
Speaking of Melo and that 6-man thing, I kind of talked about it real briefly before, but the Melo community after that Rockets game was up in arms. A lot of people say he shouldn't have went there. Fuck Stotts. They lied to him. And I was one of those people. Like, I was like, God damn, like, they lied to us. Like, they said that Melo was going to finish games, and he didn't finish the game. He wasn't even in there offensively after timeout. It's like, what's going on? Obviously, I found out this news that he's sick with the flu, does not have COVID. He's feeling better, which is good. But how would you calm the Melo community down after a not ideal start to the season. So obviously that Houston game, obviously him being out sick and, them thinking it was COVID at first, but it not being like, what would you say to everybody out there who is worried, who is bugging out, who is saying, yo, he went to the wrong team, he shouldn't have signed to Portland?
Well, most of those people were the same people, in my opinion, that were saying Portland was the right place to go. So now that their initial reaction to the whole thing is now changed, they're all up in arms, right? They can't deal with it in a way. But to calm them down, it's one game, people. You guys got to realize stuff happens. And then finding out that he was sick, it's yeah, maybe that he told Coach Stotts, don't put me in, I'm not feeling well. You know what I mean? He's become a very selfless guy where he'll do what's right for the team. And if he is sick and he knows, hey, you better just put Jones in there instead of me because I'm not feeling well, and that's what he's going to do. So in a way, it's kind of like one game. He played 20 minutes. He didn't shoot well. There's reasons for why he couldn't have been in there, but we've seen Stotts trust him in the clutch before. So in a way, it's like history has shown us not to panic because Melo can't play in the fourth, and even off the bench, his first game he played really well. You know what I mean? He's only had two games to prove himself in this new role.
Yeah, fair points. My whole thing would just be it's one game, and I understand that it's one game out of one game.
Yeah.
But at the same time, let this play out a little. Now that we know what we know about him not feeling well and shit, if this happens again when he's healthy, especially if he's playing well,
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing. But he wasn't having the best game, and he wasn't feeling well.
Yeah.
So with those two things taken into account, and by the way, even if he doesn't, in my opinion, even if he's not having a good game, he should still fucking be in there because he just proved 4 months ago that he can hit clutch shots still in year 17 then, but year 18 he can still hit those clutch shots, so he should still be in there. I don't care if he's 0 for 10, put him in the fucking game at the end of the game.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think we should give it a few days, a few games, see what happens. And if shit still goes downhill, if all that, Neil O'Shea talk about Melo's legacy was a lie and Terry Stotts is suddenly turned against Melo in favor of Derrick Jones Jr., then I think I don't want to say revolt, but then it's okay to bug out.
Yeah.
But as of now, I think let's give it a few games, see what happens. And yeah, I guess we'll see what happens after a few more games.
Yeah, because even with other players before, I living in Toronto, I've watched a lot of Raptors games, and there's been times too where back when DeRozan was on the team, I remember he's come up there and play on the team, and he just wouldn't be shooting well, he wouldn't be playing well, and he'd get taken out in the fourth for a bit. And everyone's like, oh, why are you taking DeRozan out? Why are you taking DeRozan? It's because the guy on the bench has it going, you know what I mean? You want to feed him hot hand. And sometimes DeRozan can really prove himself in the fourth. He's a great player, don't get me wrong. But there were times when it's you want to go to the guy that's more proven. And I feel like people got to remember Melo is very proven in the fourth quarter. So even if he's 0 for 10, like you said, I remember there was a few games in the bubble he didn't shoot well. He may have only didn't have games where he didn't play well, but then he came over with a clutch 3 in the fourth quarter. So yeah, he shows up when you need him to.
Right.
That's just how he is.
Yeah. So
yeah,
a few games before we get our pitchforks ready.
Definitely.
All right, Brandon. We've reached the end of this podcast. Been going for pretty much 29 minutes.
Yeah.
At the end of every podcast, we allow our guests to control a narrative. So it could be anything from jerseys. I got my new 00
Nice.
Jersey for Christmas, so I had to rock that first podcast back.
Definitely.
It could be jerseys, champagne, water bottles, gum, Melo, literally whatever you want.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the floor and let you control the narrative.
I'm going to stick with Melo because that's all I really know at this point. But I feel like year 18 doesn't mean that he's finished. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of people think of older players who are nearing the late end of 30. They kind of think of them as they're done. In a way, if you look at Melo's career and you look at LeBron's career, two guys that get compared often, I feel like people don't give enough credit for how great Melo's been. We always give credit to LeBron for his consistency over his career. Same thing you could say for Melo. He kept himself in great shape. A lot of people don't even make it to year 18. You know what I mean? So it's impressive enough that he's still out there giving it his all. He still looks athletic like he did 3 years ago. He's still making the same moves, same shots. He's always had this game where it's kind of timeless in a way. And he could probably play till 40. You never know, right?
Yeah.
Just the narrative of him being old, being washed, it's like that's like what I'd call a casual statement. Like it just people who just turn on the TV for 4 minutes and say, "Oh, Melo had 10 points. Oh, he's washed." Like they don't actually sit down and watch the game and realize that his first step's still very quick. He can blow by defenders really easily. His jumper looks the same as it did back in New York. Like he's knocking down the same shots. Like that's just a narrative to me that I'd like control. It's just that age is really just a number now more than ever, and that Melo can just keep playing, and even if he is on the bench, like that's not going to really bother him. He's already accepted that role of being the sixth man. And I think it'd be the coolest thing ever if he wins Sixth Man of the Year, because a lot of people are going to see his name under an award and be like, "Whoa, Melo still got it." And like all of those casual fans will be like, "Oh, he won Sixth Man of the Year. He must be good still." And I say, "No, you're really watching. He's been good this whole time." So I feel like if he wins Sixth Man of the Year, he'll kind of wake some people up and show in year 18 he still got it.
Yeah. Well said. Last question. Raptors are playing the Blazers. Who are you rooting for?
Always Blazers. Even when I was at the Raptors game, like I said at the start, when I watched it live, I still have my Melo jersey there. There are other people there I have my Knicks one. I haven't got a Blazers one yet. And there are other people there with Knicks Melo jerseys.
Let's go.
Cheering for him. Blazers fans, no matter what, I always support the player. Even if I'm in Toronto, that's fine. I'm still wearing the Melo jersey.
Go. Fair. Respect.
Yeah.
All right, man. For everybody who is watching or listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, go hit up Brandon on Instagram at Melo Anthony, and the L is a 7. So ME70 Anthony 15 does a great job kind of controlling the Melo narrative in his own way and posting pics, videos, stats, and all that shit. So keep it up, man. We appreciate you, and I appreciate the time tonight, bro.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Of course, man. Stay mellow.
Yes, you too.